I want to read from a recent statement made by David Comissong. David is the Barbados ambassador to CARICOM, and CARICOM is the type of United Nations of the Caribbean. And this is what David has to say. It's a very pointed message in relation to Richard Drax. He says, "It was Richard Drax's ancestor, James Drax, who was one of the very first planters in Barbados. And not only was he involved in setting up plantation agriculture from way back, but he was perhaps the critical pioneer of the sugar revolution. James Drax became fabulously wealthy on the basis of pioneering this sugar revolution. And then, in 1654, he left Barbados, emigrated back to England, taking the profits that he had generated at Draxdale Hall Plantation with him, and proceeded to buy up a set of opulent properties in England. But even though he left, his descendants continued to operate the plantation in Barbados. Today, the Drax family still owns and operates that plantation. Our reparations task force in the Caribbean feels very strongly that, considering the central role the Drax families played in this history for close on 400 years, and the fact that they're still here and still benefiting from the wealth that's been siphoned off and sent to the UK, that the Drax family needs to pay reparations. And part of the reparations we want is custody of the Drax Hall plantation. That plantation and its records could be of tremendous cultural, psychological and academic benefit to the Barbadian society, permitting us to have a proper understanding of those 400 years of chattel slavery. You could not find a more perfect slavery museum than the Drax Hall Great House and the plantation that has been continuously in operation for close to 400 years in the hands of the same family. Richard Drax is probably the most hated man in Barbados today. And that need not have been the case. If he'd simply done the correct thing, he could have set such a positive example, a descendant of this infamous Barbadian slavery family who did the right thing and reached out in the right way. But instead, he's been cast in this light as the arch villain of the reparations campaign in Barbados. But we have to bring him to the table using public advocacy. And to do that, we need our allies in the UK. Responsible people in the UK should be very concerned about this, because this gentleman is a member of Parliament. And yet the image he's presenting is a man who says, this has nothing to do with me. I owe these people nothing because it concerns my ancestor 400 years ago. He's therefore adding insult to injury, and our people are feeling the insult very, very deeply. Drax's attitude and lack of acknowledgement is very, very regrettable. It is my hope that between the public campaigns in Barbados, and perhaps even more importantly in the UK, he will be prevailed upon to see that he's going down the wrong road and doing a lot of damage, not only to his own reputation, but also to the prospect of a shared future between our peoples, built on mutual understanding and on partnership. If you do, like Richard Drax, thank you, Lynn. If you do like Richard Drax and say, nothing to do with me, We owe you nothing. That's just about my ancient ancestors. I've no responsibility. Then you'll be adding insult to injury, and you'll be virtually guaranteeing a reaction of bitterness and hostility by the people who feel that you have insulted them in addition to injuring them. That's not the 21st century world we want. We want nations, governments, prime ministers, MPs to have the moral conscience to be able to recognise where a wrong has been done and to repair it. That's just common decency. And lastly, David Comesong says, this is the message we need to take to our brothers and sisters in Europe and the UK from Barbados. They were able to rise to that level of moral conscience in the anti-apartheid movement, and I have no doubt that similarly they can rise to that level with the reparations movement. Thanks.